Our living hope includes a unique aspect that relates very specifically to the people of Israel, the biological descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. You know, Jacob's name was changed to Israel. Included in this part of the hope is Israel inheriting the land and Jerusalem and the temple area. It's all wrapped up in this information that is specific to these biological believing descendants of Abraham. Correct understanding of this vital information will give us not only a more complete understanding of our hope, but it will give us a better understanding of the whole of the Scripture. So we're going to begin by looking at, first of all, the covenant that was cut with Abraham. And this is recorded in Genesis chapter 17. Abraham is an outstanding individual in the Scripture. I think it's the first 1,500 years of time is recorded in the first 11 chapters of the book of Genesis. And then from Genesis chapter 12 through 25 is focused on this one man, Abraham, and then his son, Isaac. So I'm going to leave it to you to read chapter 17 on your own and just give you the highlights of the covenant that Yahweh entered into with Abraham. Now, a covenant there are two parties involved. There's the God, of course, and then Abraham. And both parties have responsibility in this covenant. So Genesis chapter 17 in verses 2 through 9 is where God lays out the promises that he makes as a part of this covenant that he's entering into with Abraham. And the first thing that it says is, I will multiply you exceedingly. You will be a father of many nations. And so it's not only, well, when he said to him, I will multiply you exceedingly, we also see later on in that section that he refers to it as the stars that are in the sky, your descendants will be, as the sand that's on the seashore, as the dust that's in the earth. He's going to have a lot of descendants. Then the next thing was that you will be a father of many nations. Israel was one nation. There would be many other nations included in this. And then it goes on to say that the kings will come forth from you. And we know, of course, that King David came from Abraham's line, and the most significant king of all is Jesus. He came out of this line of Abraham. Yahweh will establish my covenant between me and you and your descendants after you throughout their generation for an everlasting covenant. It's going to be an everlasting covenant, and that's kind of important. And then God said to you and to your descendants after you, I will give to you and to your descendants all the land of Canaan for an everlasting possession. And again, that's important to acknowledge. All the land of Canaan for an everlasting possession. And I will be your God. There's the essence of this is communicated in Genesis 17 in verses 8 and 9, where it says, I will establish my covenant between me and you, Abraham, and your descendants after you, throughout their generations, for an everlasting covenant, to be God to you and to your descendants after you. I will give to you and to your descendants after you the land of your sojourning, all the land of Canaan, for an everlasting possession, and I will be their God. Now, God made this commitment. And look at Hebrews, would you please? Hebrews chapter 6. He made this commitment to them in the covenant. It's not only a commitment, it's a covenant. It's a blood covenant that he made that he will absolutely keep, which is really highlighted in the communication in the book of Hebrews in the 6th chapter, where it talks about this. It reflects back on this in 6:13. For when God made promise to Abraham, since he could swear by no one greater, he swore by himself, saying, I will surely bless you, and I will surely multiply you. And so having patiently waited, he obtained the promise. For men swear by one greater than themselves. With them an oath given as confirmation is an end of every dispute. In the same way, God, desiring even more to show to the heirs of the promise the unchangeableness of his purpose, interposed with an oath. The ESV says he guaranteed with an oath. I think that speaks it better. He guaranteed with an oath the unchangeableness of his purpose, guaranteed with an oath, so that by two unchangeable things in which it is impossible for God to lie, we would have taken refuge. We who have taken refuge would have strong encouragement to take hold of the hope that is set before us. It goes on to talk about that hope as being the anchor of our soul. God has really put himself out there. He promised Abraham, he cut a covenant with Abraham, and then he swore to Abraham that he would absolutely keep the promises that he made to him and to his descendants after him, his son Isaac, and then on to his grandson Jacob, whose name was changed to Israel. However, these things didn't all completely happen. They still haven't happened to this day. Another covenant that he cut was with David, called the Davidic covenant, and that's in 1 Chronicles chapter 17. And there's quite a few aspects to this also. Israel will dwell in their own place and not be moved again. The wicked will not waste them anymore as formerly. Yahweh will subdue all your enemies. Yahweh will build a house for you. He will set up one of his descendants after you. Who will be of your sons, and God will establish his kingdom. He, David's descendant, shall build for me a house, and I will establish his throne forever. Solomon did build a temple, but this is not only referring to Solomon, this is more so referring to what Jesus would do. I will be his father, and he shall be my son. I will not take my loving kindness away from him. I will settle him in my house and in my kingdom forever. His throne shall be established forever. Again, tremendous promises that God made. And the essence in this section is in 1 Chronicles 17, verses 9 and 14. I will appoint a place for my people Israel, and will plant them so that they may dwell in their own place and not be moved again. And not be moved again. And the wicked will not waste them anymore as formerly. Well, for centuries, Israel was not in their own place. It wasn't until 1948 that the people of the Jewish descent went to Israel. And their enemies are far from not attacking them any longer. Just this past week, there were people that were being knifed and killed in Jerusalem by the Palestinians. And within this year, there have been missiles that have gone into Israel. They're constantly under threat. So the promises that were made to David have not yet been fulfilled. That verse 14 says, "But I will settle him in my house and my kingdom forever, and his throne shall be established forever." And again, the surety of this commitment that God made to David is wonderfully expressed in Psalm 89. "I have made a covenant with my chosen. I have sworn to David my servant. I will establish your seed forever and build your throne to all generations." Selah, consider what I say. Verse 29 says, "So I will establish his descendants forever, and his throne as the days of heaven. My covenant I will not violate, nor will I alter the utterances of my lips. Once I have sworn by my holiness, I will not lie to David. His descendants shall endure forever, and his throne as the sun before me. It shall be established forever like the moon, and the witness in the sky is faithful. Selah, consider what I say. Consider what? That God made promise. He cut covenant with David, and he's saying it will absolutely come to pass. There's another place in the scriptures that says, if you can change day and night, then you can change the covenant that I have made to David. So we see with these two men, which by the way, in Matthew chapter 1, they are the first two that are listed in the genealogy of Jesus Christ. We see in these two men an unalterable commitment of God, unchangeable, that he will fulfill these covenant promises. However, as of yet, they have not been fulfilled. We have noticed in previous sessions, we've acknowledged in previous sessions, that Israel had a very difficult time keeping their end of the bargain. Yahweh was faithful to his promises, but Israel wavered considerably, to say the least. You remember what we read in Ezekiel chapter 16 when God showed Ezekiel what was going on in the temple and how much idolatry there was. And then we saw it with the abomination of desolation, how Israel constantly wavered from their loyalty and their fidelity to Yahweh. And then henceforth, the promises have still not been fulfilled, but they will be. In Hosea chapter 1, we're going to go to Hosea sometime soon here. Hosea chapter 1, so you might want to try finding it. In Hosea chapter 1, verse 9 is a very important verse of Scripture. To understand what has happened to Israel and what is currently happening with Israel. Hosea was a prophet who God called, and he told Hosea to marry a woman who was a prostitute. They had 3 children. These 3 children were given names that confronted Israel. One of the children's names was called Lo-Ammi. In verse 9 of Hosea 1, it says, and Yahweh said, name him Lo-Ammi, which means, for you are not my people, I am not your God. Very, very powerful. You are not my people, and I am not your God. Now this is after century after century after century of Israel rejecting Yahweh as their God. He finally said, it's enough. To this day, Israel remains Lo-Ammi, not Yahweh's people. However, according to Hosea chapter 3, verse 5, it says, the sons of Israel will return and seek Yahweh their God and David their king, and they will come trembling to Yahweh and to his goodness in the last days. So there will be a time when they come back to him. It says now, though, in Romans chapter 11, what it says is, from the standpoint of the gospel, they, Israel, are enemies for your sake, your being the Christians. That Israel today are enemies for the Christian sake. But not from the standpoint of God's choice. They, Israel, are beloved for the sake of the fathers, for the sake of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. For the gifts and the calling of God are irrevocable. Even though they have been in that state and they are currently in that state, this God's commitment to Abraham and to David will be fulfilled, is the essence of what it's saying. And did you find Hosea? Perhaps I should do the same. Hosea chapter 3. Now Hosea, as I said, was told by Yahweh to marry a woman who was a prostitute. And she had these 3 children. After that, she then departed from him and got back into being a prostitute and was living that kind of a lifestyle. She got to the place of hitting her bottom, and she was in the situation where she was being sold into slavery. She was on the slavery stage being bidded for, and Yahweh says to Hosea, go and buy her back. Bring her back into your home and nurture her and love her and care for her. And in doing that, it was a living example of Yahweh in his relationship to his people, Israel. That's why in chapter 3 it says, then the Lord said to me, go again, love a woman who is loved by her husband, yet an adulteress. Even as Yahweh loves the sons of Israel, though they turn to other gods and love raisin cakes, so I brought her for myself for 15 shekels of silver and a homer and a half of barley. That's talking about Hosea bought his wife back. Then I said to her, you shall stay with me for many days. You shall not play the harlot, nor shall you have a man. So I also will be toward you. Verse 4, the sons of Israel, here's the comparison, will remain for many days without a king or prince, without sacrifice or pillar, and without an ephod or a household idols. Afterwards, the sons of Israel will return and seek Yahweh their God and David their king, and they will come trembling to Yahweh and to his goodness in the last days. And that verse 4 is where they have been and continue to be to this very day. They are without a king. Jesus is not here yet. They're king. They don't have a king. They're without sacrifice because there is no temple. And they're in that low mi state. Yet, God has promised that he's going to change all of that. It says in Micah chapter 7, who is a God like you, in verse 18, who pardons iniquity and passes over the rebellious acts of the remnant of his possession. He does not refrain his anger forever, because he delights in unchanging love. He will again have compassion on us. He will tread out our iniquities underfoot. Yes, you will cast all their sins into the depths of the sea. You will give truth to Jacob, Jacob's that Israel, and unchanging love to Abraham, which he swore to our forefathers from the days of old. The Israelites, to this, it says in Micah chapter 4 that the Israelites are still in Babylon. Babylon representing the ungodly world. Yahweh's glory is no longer in Jerusalem. Jerusalem is a very, I would say, unholy place today. Although many call it a holy place, if you go and visit, you will feel differently about that. He promised to bring them back, as we just read, and indeed that will happen. Turn to Romans chapter 11. Now, I must say to you that there are certainly people from among Israel, Jewish people today, who have accepted Christ and that are Christians today. And let me remind you that the first church were all from Israel. The 12 apostles were all from Israel. And there has always been a remnant through time who has believed. But as there is today, there are some of that background that are Christians. Some of them are dear friends and brothers. However, the vast majority, it is not so. In Romans chapter 11 and in verse 7, what then? What Israel is seeking, it has not obtained, nor those who were chosen obtained it. The rest were hardened. Just as it is written, God gave them a spirit of stupor, eyes to see not and ears to hear not, down to this very day. That's recorded from Deuteronomy 29. And David says, let their table become a snare and a trap and a stumbling block and a retribution to them. Let their eyes be darkened to see not and bend their backs forever. I say then, that they did not stumble so as to fall, did they? May it never be. But by their transgression, salvation has come to the Gentiles to make them jealous. It was through, in the Old Testament, Israel primarily. But since Israel has fallen into the New Testament, the Gentiles have come involved. And there's many, many more Gentile believers. And in the end, will make them jealous, the Israelites, to turn back to Yahweh. Verse 12, now if their transgression is riches for the world, and their failure is riches for the Gentiles, how much more will their fulfillment be? If for their falling so many have believed, how much more richer will it be when they believe? Now there are certainly many Jewish people today who believe that Yahweh is the one true God, although they won't say his name. They won't pronounce the name Yahweh. They will refer to him as Adonai. But they don't believe that Jesus is the Christ and the Messiah. And Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father but by him. Verse 25 says, for I do not want you, brethren, to be uninformed of this mystery, so that you will not be wise in your own estimation, that a partial hardening has happened to Israel, and to the fullness of the Gentiles has come in. And so all Israel will be saved, just as it is written, the deliverer will come from Zion. He will remove ungodliness from Jacob. It's referring to Jesus. This is my covenant with them, when I will take away their sins. From the standpoint of the gospel, they are enemies for your sake. But from the standpoint of God's choice, they are beloved for the sake of the fathers. For the gifts and the calling of God are irrevocable. For just as you were once disobedient to God, but now have been shown mercy because of their disobedience, so these also now have been disobedient, that because of the mercy shown to you, they also may now be shown mercy. For God has shut up all in disobedience, so that he may show mercy to all. An extraordinary God that we have. You could read Isaiah 29, verses 9 through 13, and gain even more insight to what we just read here in Romans. I'll leave that to you for your home study. So, it says in Isaiah chapter 10, again on the screen, I just wanted to point out to you that there were people of Israel that believed today. And, you know, I was wondering as I was studying this information today, how many people are there? How many Jewish people are there? According to Alexa, and you know she knows everything, there are 8.69 million people in the country of Israel today. Ironically, there are 10 million Jewish people here in the United States, and 2.3 of them here, 2.3 million here in New York. So there's more people of Israel here in the United States by far than there is in the land of Israel. It has not yet been fulfilled. What these things that we read were promised to Abraham and to David. But Isaiah 10:20 says, now in that day, the remnant of Israel, a small partial of them, some of them, those of the house of Jacob who have escaped, will never again rely on the one who struck them, but they will truly rely on Yahweh, the Holy One of Israel. A remnant will return, the remnant of Jacob, to the mighty God. For though your people, O Israel, may be like the sand of the sea, only a remnant within them will return. A destruction is determined, overflowing with righteousness. So there will be a remnant that responds and turns back. There has always been a remnant. Isaiah 11 speaks similarly in verse 11. Then it will happen on that day that the Lord will again recover the second time with his hand the remnant of his people, who will remain from Assyria, Egypt, Pathros, Cush, Elam, and Shinar, which is Babylon, Hamath, and from the islands of the sea. And he will lift up a standard from the nations, an assembly, the banished ones of Israel, and will gather the dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth. And there will be a highway from Assyria for the remnant of his people who will be left, just as there was for Israel in the day that they came out of the land of Egypt. Again, in Jeremiah chapter 23, verses 3 through 8, it says, "Then I myself will gather the remnant of my flock out of the countries where I have driven them, and bring them back to their pasture, and they will be fruitful and multiply. I will also raise up shepherds over them, and they will tend them, and they will not be afraid any longer, nor be terrified, nor will any be missing, declares Yahweh." I can't imagine the constant threat that the people of Israel live under today. "Behold, the days are coming, declares Yahweh, when I will raise for David a righteous branch," referring to Jesus. "He will reign as king and act wisely and do justice and righteousness in the land. In his days, Judah will be saved and Israel will dwell securely. And this is the name by which he will be called, Yahweh our righteousness. Therefore, behold, the days are coming, declares Yahweh, when they will no longer say, as Yahweh lives, who brought up the sons of Israel from the land of Egypt, but as Yahweh lives, who brought up and led back the descendants of the household of Israel from the northland, from all the countries where I have driven them. Then they will live on their own soil." This is the great promise that Yahweh has made. Look at the book of Revelation, please. Revelation chapter 14. Here, John is given a revelation about the future. Well, let's look at chapter 7 first. He's given a revelation about the future as it pertains to Israel. Revelation chapter 7, verse 1 says, "And I heard the number of those who were sealed, 144,000 sealed from every tribe of the sons of Israel." Verse 5, from the tribe of Judah, 12,000. And then it keeps on going down, naming the men from Gad and from Asher and from all of the original patriarchs of Israel. There'll be 12,000 from each one of those tribes, equaling 144,000 Jehovah's Witnesses. No, 144,000 Israelites. The Jehovah's Witnesses claim to be the 144,000, but they're not. "After these things I looked, and behold, a great multitude which no one could count, from every nation and all the tribes and peoples and tongues, standing before the throne and before the Lamb, clothed in white robes, and palm branches were in their hands." So he first enumerates the remnant from Israel. Then he talks about all the other Gentiles that are going to be included. That was verse 9. "A great multitude which no one could count." Verse 10, "They cried out with a loud voice, saying, Salvation to our God who sits on the throne and to the Lamb. And all the angels were standing around the throne and around the elders and the four living creatures. And they fell on their faces before the throne, and they worshiped God, saying, Amen. Blessings and glory and wisdom and thanksgiving and honor and power and might be to our God forever and ever." It's sort of a glimpse of what it's going to be like when Christ comes back. There's going to be this remnant from Israel and all the others, and we're going to be praising the Lord. And the chapter goes on and speaks more about this. You can read it again on your own. Look at chapter 14 of Revelation. When reading the book of Revelation, you have to keep in mind that these are not all one vision. There are a number of different visions that are given, and they're not necessarily in chronological order. Some of them are, but some of them aren't. In chapter 14, verse 1, it says, "Then I looked, and behold, the Lamb was standing on Mount Zion, and with him 144,000, having his name and the name of his father written on their foreheads. Until this time in the book of Revelation, the visions that were given, the Lamb was not, he was seen in heaven. He had not been seen on earth. And here in this revelation, he's not only on earth, but he's on Mount Zion. He's in that holy place. And who's with him? The remnant, 144,000 Jews. I don't know if that, I tend to believe that kind of literal, that it would be that number, but maybe it's figurative too. In other words, it's a remnant of Israel who finally get to the place where they have Yahweh and Jesus on their forehead, in their mind. They understand that Jesus is the Christ. Finally, how wonderful. Then verse 2, 14:2, and I heard a voice from heaven like the sound of many waters, and like the sound of a loud thunder. A voice which I heard was like the sound of a harpist playing on their harps. And they sang a new song before the throne and before the four living creatures and the elders. And no one could learn the song except the 144,000 who had been purchased from the earth. These are the ones who have not been defiled with women, for they have kept themselves chaste. These are the ones who follow the Lamb wherever he goes. These have been purchased from among men as the first fruits to God and to the Lamb. I want to unpack this verse 4 for you because there's a lot of information in it. These are the ones who have not defiled themselves with women. I think on the surface you might immediately conclude that they're celibate, but it could also mean that they didn't defile themselves with women, meaning that the way that they dealt with women was within the boundaries of marriage. They didn't have extramarital or premarital sex. They had only within, in proper manner. And the reason that that's relevant is because it's a big deal as it is communicated in the book of Revelation. Look at verse 8. Another angel, a second one, followed, saying, Fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great, she who has made all the nations drink of the wine of the passion of her immorality. That word immorality or immoralities is used 12 times in the book of Revelation, and it's referring to sexual immorality and sometimes to spiritual immorality. Sexual immorality will flood the end-time society. The world leader, that superpower that we've spoken of before, he will use greed and sexual immorality to entice the peoples of the world to worship him. The LGBTQ movement that's going on in our world today is aggressively and successfully being accepted as a normal lifestyle. Children are now taught in school that it is normal, moral, and acceptable. Those opposing this way of thinking are considered to be narrow-minded, bigoted, immoral, and unloving. Sexual immorality is so plentiful in our society today, almost everybody has premarital sex, and most or many people live together as if they were married and yet not married. Just this week, this past Sunday, I was talking to my grandchildren. Actually, earlier in the week, my daughter, Grace, came and talked to me about her 3-year-old son who is, what kind of school is a 3-year-old in? Preschool. She went to a parent-teacher conference and to meet his teachers. He told her that he had 2 Mrs., their names, Mrs., and then Mr. My daughter gets there and finds out that there are 3 people. All 3 of them are women, but one of them identifies himself as being a man and is having the children refer to her as Mr. This is to a 3-year-old. My high school kids that I talked to this past Sunday, they were telling me that when school started this year, when they were introducing themselves, giving their names, they had to tell what pronoun they wanted to be referred to as. This is a part of our school system now. If it's like this now, you can see how it will progress. In that end time kingdom, there will be such sexual immorality, it's almost hard to conceive. Well, no, it's not. As we're moving, I can see it. And that's why this was so important in verse 4, that these were men who didn't defile themselves with women. They did it the right way, or they didn't do it at all. For they themselves kept themselves chaste. And the word chaste is also translated in some versions as virgin. And I think that's why most often they're considered to be celibate. But the word virgin is, or this word, the Greek word that's translated chaste or virgin, is also translated like this in 2 Corinthians 11. For I am jealous for you with a godly jealousy, for I betrothed you to one husband, so that to Christ I might present you as a pure virgin. In other words, it's referring to a purity of life, a holiness of life. This 144,000 are convinced that Jesus is Lord. They live a godly and a holy life, and hence they are a part of the kingdom that is coming. These are the ones who follow the Lamb wherever he goes. I'm back in verse 4 again. They follow the Lamb wherever he goes. Following the Lamb wherever that meant from that time on, through that 1,000-year period of time, that's exactly what they will be doing. These have been purchased from among men as the first fruits to God and the Lamb. Israel, indeed, was God's first fruits. That's who he went to first. Then, after that, he went to the Gentiles. You can read Jeremiah chapter 31 in the context of this teaching, and I think it will bring some great insight to you. This is the great prophecy of Yahweh's promise to Israel that begins with it manifesting itself in Revelation chapter 14, when Jesus returns and Israel finally accepts that Jesus is the Christ. They are the first fruits, and then the Gentiles are added on. This verse in Isaiah 59 says, "A Redeemer will come to Zion, to those who turn from transgression in Jacob," that's Israel, declares Yahweh. "As for me, this is my covenant with them," says Yahweh. "My spirit which is upon you, and my words which I have put in your mouth shall not depart from your mouth, nor from the mouth of your offspring, nor from the mouth of your offspring's offspring, says Yahweh, from now on and forever." The children of Israel will come back again to their own country, and David will rule over them as king. He will be a vice regent with Jesus. David, having been raised from the dead, will be given the responsibility to be the king over Israel again, and the 12 apostles will rule over the 12 tribes of Israel. This is stated in Jeremiah 30, verses 3 and then 7 through 9. You notice at the bottom there, "But they shall serve Yahweh their God and David their king, whom I will raise up for them." Again, it says in Hosea chapter 3, we read in verse 4 and 5, I didn't make a point of it, I will now. "Afterwards the sons of Israel will return and seek Yahweh their God and David their king." And then in Isaiah 55, verses 3 and 4, "Incline your ear and come to me. Listen, that you may live, and I will make an everlasting covenant with you, according to the faithful mercy shown to David. Behold, I have made him a witness to the people." And then in Ezekiel, "Then I will set over them one shepherd, my servant David, and he will feed them, and he will feed them himself." Ezekiel was written long after David was dead. "He will feed them himself and be their shepherd, and I, Yahweh, will be their God, and my servant David will be prince among them. I, Yahweh, have spoken it." I think that's rather cool that David is going to get to be the king over Israel again. And then we know from Matthew 19 and Luke 22 that God said to the 12 apostles that they will rule over the 12 tribes of Israel. Again, back in Revelation chapter 14, in verse 5, and no lie was found in their mouth. They are blameless. And I saw another angel flying into the mid-heaven, having an eternal gospel to preach to those who live on earth, and to every nation and tribe and tongue and people. And he said with a loud voice, fear God and give him glory, because the hour of judgment has come. Worship him who made the heaven and the earth and the sea and the springs of water. During that 7-year time, the end 7 years, sometime in there is when Israel will be jealous for the Gentile believers. They will repent, and then they will start speaking the gospel like the Gentiles have been doing since Christ left. Then verse 8, another angel, a second one, we read that following, fallen is Babylon. The old world will finally be gone with all of her immorality. Then another angel, the third one, followed them, saying with a loud voice, if anyone worships the beast and his image, and I'll leave you to read that on your own. The thing that I want to end with is to remind you that Israel indeed was God's first fruit. He made promises through David or through Abraham and through David that have not yet been fulfilled, but will be fulfilled in the end. When Christ comes back, those covenants will be fulfilled. Israel will be a part of it. A remnant of Israel will be a part of it. Now, that favoritism is in relationship to the promises and the covenants that God had made. But we are certainly not excluded from that as Gentiles, because we know that we are connected to the Abrahamic covenant, as it says in the book of Romans and it says in the book of Galatians. We are a part of the promises that were made to Abraham, and Jesus is going to be our king also, as he made that promise to David. So we're a part of it, but there is that uniqueness that is there for the people of Israel. And then we'll see that it includes the city of God, the great city of God, and we'll look at that in our next session. So.